Minutes. So how's everybody doing? Yeah, this weather. I just got back from Ireland. Pam, my significant other, she's not here, but she took me for my birthday for 50th to Ireland for a week, which was nice. We did a lot of castle hopping, staying at different castles. So that was beautiful. But the weather's just like it is here. It's cold and rainy. It's like, man, but the roads are bigger here. So, and I drive on the right side to the left because man, that was stressful for me driving on the left. So I was like, I had my brother making sure that I was staying in the right lanes because I didn't want to hit somebody. It's like, that's constantly I'm having to think, left, 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 left. Yeah. In my head, I'm serious, tense in my muscles, and I was glad because they made me the designated driver. And I was like, oh man. And I wanted to look around, and I was like, no, nothing for me. I had to keep my eyes on the road. But anywho, yeah, now I'm recovering. I need my sleep and stuff. But anywho, can I get somebody to lead us off in prayer? Mark, since you're there. Yeah, and I happen to be looking at you. Amen. Thank you. Appreciate it. Hey guys, coming in. All right, welcome to Caanan. I was hoping that was a lesson after I looked at what Mark sent me. Okay, so we're good. I'm not ahead and I'm not behind. So, anywho, after looking at the lesson and I was looking at the Bible verses as I usually do, I was saying, okay, welcome to Caanan. And then the Bible verses that accompany the lesson are Matthew 11, uh, 28 through 30, and we'll get into those. I was like, okay, how do these tie together? What do you guys think of when you hear the word Canaan? Welcome to Canaan. I had some ideas. What's that? Grapes this big? Promised land? Land of milk and honey? Yeah, I mean, a lot of those, read the Old Testament, if you guys have read it, a lot of it is based on God's promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, what he promised them if, bringing them out of Egypt and what, they were obviously being led around the desert and we're going to receive, for being faithful. And I was thinking, okay, well, that's promise, something good, something, to hope for. And I was thinking, how does that tie to the New Testament and what our lesson, our Bible verses are over? Let's see. Oop, wrong button. And these are our Bible verses. I hope you guys can see those. Yeah. I picked two versions, the Amplified Bible and the Message. One of it, the Message kind of puts it in more in today's vernacular. But it says, are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest, walk with me, and work with me. Watch how I do it, and learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you, and keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. And that's just a paraphrase of the top one. It says, come to me, all who are weary and heavily burdened. That's the one we know more of. By religious rituals that provide no peace. And I will give you rest, refreshing your souls with salvation. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, following me as my disciple. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest, renewal, blessed, quiet for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and my burden is light. And that's the one we hear most often. And I was thinking, okay, tying that to the New Testament, this is Jesus speaking. And I think, okay, the promised land. I mean, that's kind of what Christ was, a foreshadow of the promise. That God's hope, his blessing for his nation Israel and for all mankind. And I'm thinking, okay, this is how pretty much it ties. Jesus is our Canaan. He's the big grapes, the land of milk and honey, all those promises, everything fulfilled in him. But what exactly is Jesus saying in these verses? What is he implying from what we just read? I mean, and this is uncharacteristic because the lesson tonight I've kind of taken the verses and broken them down into sections by words and stuff. And I've never really done an in-depth study by word, but it's interesting when you put them all together how the visual, the picture that God is telling us. But what is Jesus, saying in these verses? What does it mean to you guys? If I need to go back. Come to me, all who are weary and heavily burdened. What is that saying to you? I mean, if we're thinking about the promised land, Canaan, all those promises, we're tying all these thoughts together. What does that say to you? Does it give you any hope? In what ways? Is it just physical or spiritual? Everything? In every which way? Is this also, is this like a calling? Is Christ calling people? So is it only for people that are, Christians that believe in him, or is it for everybody? So it's not. So he wants everybody. He doesn't want the rich. He doesn't want the poor. He doesn't want, he wants everyone. So what exactly is, I already did that. Sorry about that. For believers and unbelievers alike, isn't Jesus calling us, one, to believe who he said he was and what he did? Would you go to somebody if you didn't believe in what they said, who they were? That was kind of what the Jewish religious elite at the time were trying to do, discredit him. He's not the Messiah. Yeah, they didn't want to believe him because they didn't want to give up their position, and that speaks a lot about humility, and we've had lessons on that. Wasn't he also, though, trying to, as far as calling people to discipleship, that characterized his earthly ministry? Like you said, he was going around healing people, doing all kinds of stuff. He wanted people to fully submit to him and follow him. Also, he was calling people to come to him for relief from oppression. They were oppressed by their own people, weren't they? The religious, Pharisees, Sadducees, they were, and we'll get into it. I have a few verses up here that Jesus, he kind of chastises them, call them a few things. But he's like, these people aren't here for you. They're here for themselves. He also is calling people to turn from whatever you're presently depending on to him, wasn't he? Read the other part of half of that verse. My yoke, my load is light. So if we get into it, the context of the verses, and I like studying that, kind of what was actually going on and what they would have understood, the first century church. These, when Jesus is saying these to these people, the Jewish nation, what would they have thought of? What would they have, in their mind, what would have come into the mind when Jesus said this? And this is in these passages, the Lord, Jesus is addressing the people of Israel who were burdened and weighed down with the externalism, the legal do's and don'ts of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And with the consequences, the guilt, the frustration, they were putting this burden on these people, telling them, you got to do this, you got to do that. And, and if you don't do this, you got to perform this or that, this. I mean, obviously God gave them, in the desert, gave them rules and regulations for sacrifices and all this to atone for their sins. But the Pharisees and Sadducees took it to a whole different level. And it was not by faith. It was more by, it's like, if I go to church, if I, check this box, check that box, hey, I'm golden. It's not by heart, and that's everything that God was telling them. Hey, I want you to follow me because you love me, not because you got to just check these boxes. For instance, in Matthew 23:2, Christ referred to the scribes and Pharisees as men who sit on Moses' seat. And have you ever thought of that? It's like, what is he talking about? Sitting on Moses' seat. Anybody know? Yeah, it has to do more with power. And his point is that the Pharisees claim, like you're talking about, the authority of Moses. And Jesus is calling them out. He called them whitewashed tombs. But it's, they're teachers of the law, which meant that they also demanded that all of Israel was supposed to submit to them, just like all of Israel submitted to Moses. So they're saying, look, we're sitting in Moses' seat, and Jesus is saying that. And so these people are actually demanding things of you, expecting things of you, and in this verse that we're reading, he's saying, these people are sitting in Moses' seat. That's what they claim. And look at what they're doing to you. And then, the other part of the context is, 23:4, Jesus warned the people of, the oppressive, legalistic, ways of the Pharisees. He says, he says, what does it say? And they tie up heavy loads and lay on them men's shoulder. And they don't even lift a finger to help them. The Jews at this time would have been thinking of all these things. This is what Jesus is bringing to their mind. He's telling them, do you guys realize what's going on? These people that you call your leaders, these are what, I'm here to basically lessen the load, the weight of what these people have laid on you. And that's why they hated him so much. That's why they wanted to crucify him. As soon as he said these things, they knew he was talking about him. They're like, what do they want to do? As soon as they started conspiring, how do we get rid of this guy? And they're saying, you got to do these. It's funny because, there's your 615 commandments that the Jews came up with. But, pretty much in the Mosaic Law, there were 365 prohibitions and 250 commandments. But lumped together, 615 of do's and don'ts. This is what you can and can't do. You can't walk this far on a Sabbath. You can't do this. You can't do that. And I think that's why Jesus did a lot of things on the Sabbath. It's like, this is not what it was for. So, ask you guys something. How many people in here would like to do things for people, obviously we obey the laws, but would you rather follow somebody that you love and care about, that cares about you, or somebody that's just always laying down the law, hammering, do this, do that, and there's no love? Who would you guys rather follow? Somebody that you know that cares about you? Or somebody that all they care about are the rules? Oh, you stepped out of line. You didn't cross this T or dot that I. I guess it would be. Larry?
Man versus man's word, man's doctrine. So
And I think Paul addressed a little bit of that as far as, people that, as far as, at that time when they were following, still part of the Old Testament law, the Mosaic law and things like that. And, Paul was saying, hey, we're no longer under that, but I do these things in order to win people for Christ, but do I really have to do these things? And the whole point about eating, idol food, and things like that, he goes, I know it's nothing, but if somebody thinks it's something and, I don't want to cause them to stumble, but there is that, people have these perceptions and we lay burdens on people sometimes, do we not? Hey, you're doing that, that's sinful. And really, in reality, it's not sinful, but you consider it sinful to yourself. But God hasn't said it's sinful, and so we hold people, you got to do what I'm doing. Do we do that? Do we hold people to our own standards? I mean, we keep ourselves in check certain ways. I mean, because we know what our weaknesses are. But do we force other people to live by those rules? If I know something's a stumbling block for me, and it's not necessarily, I'm starting to meddle, and I don't want to do that. But we do that to ourselves sometimes. We hold other people to our standards of living, what we think, not necessarily God's standard of living. Hey, you missed out. I gave you props. I told him you took me to Ireland, so just verifying anyway, going back. Well, it's like eating ice cream. I can eat ice cream. Is that a sin? Mark has a struggle with it, but, I might not want to eat in front of him. But if I go and eat ice cream, am I sinning? No, I'm not. But Mark would be like, hey, you don't need to be eating ice cream. Yeah, there you go. Well, no chocolate chip cookies. Cookies. Catherine will dine me out. But, more of the context is, even though the Old Testament was good, holy, and righteous, it didn't bring liberty because it was weak and it depended on man to follow what God had said. And we let, obviously we failed. Or the Jews failed at the time. I mean, we all did. And so, and it didn't provide the means of fulfilling the law, and thus it left men under the guilt and oppression, we're falling short. And Paul called it an administration of death instead of, having a sense of release. A freedom from guilt. And so those who were under the Mosaic law were said to be yoked to Moses, and and this is kind of what Jesus is referring to and what they would have thought of. They sit on Moses' seat. The Pharisees were, basically saying, hey, we're in charge, like you said. We're the people in power. You're supposed to follow us and do what we say. If somebody could read Acts 15, 7, 11, this is pretty much an illustration of what I'm talking about. Yeah, Acts 15, 7 through 11. So this would have come to the Jews' mind that were hearing this, what Jesus is telling them, the yoke. It's like, hey, your ancestors placed this yoke around our necks and stuff. We couldn't even do it. So why are you trying to do this to the people of the New Testament, the New Testament church? He's trying to get them to think. Think of your history. Think about what you guys have been through. And look at the Pharisees, the religious elite, the people that are leading you now. Look what they're trying to do to you. But, a lot of people, they were still, hey, we're looking for the Messiah. We're looking for this guy that's going to free us from Rome. And Jesus is kind of like, it's not about that. You guys are missing the point. So it is in this midst of this religious setting that Jesus is, talking to these people, the Jewish nation, Israel, and even the Gentiles. He's offering them an invitation to all, who want to experience relief, joy, blessings in this life through grace and a relationship with Him. And that's the whole point of our Bible lesson and our verses that we've read, about take my yoke upon you, Don't take that yoke of the Pharisees and Sadducees. It's nothing but burden, They're not trying to help you out. But He also says, learn from me. And so I broke the verses down into a few sections that, things that I researched and came across. There's an invitation and appeal. If you look at come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and you break out the words, come is, I'm not sure how you pronounce these words, duete, or it's Greek. But it's an imperative. What's that? Duty. But it's an imperative with an incitement. An incitement, you guys know what an incitement is. When you're inciting a crowd, to a riot or whatever, you're getting people excited. You're getting, you're wanting to have action, to do something. And so it's a strong appeal of the will of another. It expresses the desire and compassionate heart of Jesus and His appeal for people to come to Him as a relief from their oppressors or oppression. It's a call to turn from whatever we are presently depending on to Him. So just that word alone is implying that. And that's why, we obviously, in our words today that we use, like love and all these different ones, and their language of the day, these are the things that came to mind, This is what they meant. To, and, come to is the preposition pros, or I don't know. But it has to do with, it was always used like in conjunction with the son with the father. In other words, it's talking about intimacy. So He's not only telling you to come, to act, to do something, but He's saying, hey, I also want you to have a relationship with me, an intimate relationship with me. And me is a personal pronoun. The Pharisees basically say, do as I say, not as I do. That's why Jesus called them out. These people are laying loads on you, but not even wanting to lift a finger to help you. He's saying, come to me. Do what I do. Pharisees didn't want them to do what they were doing. Pharisees, all they wanted to do was control. What's his point? The application is obviously that Christianity is a relationship with the person of Jesus Christ. It's not a call to a program or system. How many, Buddhism, all these different religions, if you do these things, these steps, these, whatever it is, say this mantra or whatever, you're going to reach a spiritual enlightenment or get closer to God or whatever. Jesus is not saying that. He's not calling to that. And how often do, the disciple makers, obviously Jesus was a disciple and we're supposed to disciple people, bring people to Christ. But too many people end up cloning people that look like Him and, hey, you need to walk, act, talk like me. And Christ is saying that, but He's like, obviously He's God. But, too many of us, we want the glory. We don't want to share it. We want to give it to God, where Jesus obviously wants the glory, but He wants to give it to His Father. So while God uses churches, people, and... Oops, I can't see it. What's that? Theological, yeah. Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing up. It's like a little too low, but anyway. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, this is not like Hangman or something where you get points. No, there you go. So anyway, that's his point, and all points to the universal, like we already said, the significance of. Is he just calling, the rich people? Is he calling the people who got clout? He wants everybody, not the poor, not the He wants poor, lonely, whatever it is, wherever you find yourself, He wants you. He's reaching out to the whole world. Who are the weary and heavy laden points us to, when you look at the second half of that, obviously the objects of the appeal, the invitation. And, they really describe the condition of all that are either without Christ or people that as believers, we obviously aren't fully submitting to them. So we're struggling. And then so it causes, burdens, causes weariness. And so these parts of Cody.
Well, I was just going to say, so with that, though, this is on some level, at the very least on some level, still under the law.
Right. Pharisaical, Mosaical.
Right, Mosaic law. So it's interesting, when you look at these folks who are weary and heavy laden, right, the load, on one hand, the load is coming from the Pharisees, but he doesn't tell them not, he doesn't say dump that load, right? He says, do what they say, but don't do what they do, because they're hypocrites, right? They're not doing what they say, right?
Well, they're not even doing what they say, and they're not even trying to help you guys.
Right. But he doesn't tell them, don't do what they're saying. So what the Pharisees and Sadducees are saying is reasonable on a be right with God level. There is a reasonableness to it. But the Pharisees themselves aren't doing it. So he tells them do what they say, but don't do what they do. But my thought is when you look at these folks, the weary and the heavy laden, they're not getting any help from the Sadducees and Pharisees. What they are calling them to do is right stuff, but they're not helping them do it. And I think oftentimes too, we kind of, I hate to say it, but we kind of probably struggle with that. We tell people, hey, you need to be right, leave sin behind you, but we don't actually do a whole lot in engaging people's lives to help them break free from this. If somebody's got addiction stuff, oftentimes we tell people, yeah, you're still going to lose alcoholism, but we don't want to get in that mess, because it's a mess. Like, I don't got time for that. You don't got time for that. Nobody wants that burden, that trouble, that drama, right? So we kind of like help people with dialogue, but not with actually putting our hands on the mess of their life. And I think the Bible calls us to do it more in dialogue.
Getting involved.
Yeah.
Getting our hands and feet dirty. And that's kind of like when you ask somebody, how are you doing? You're like, oh, I hope they don't tell me really how they're really doing. It's like, I only got like a minute. I need to go. Mark? Well, it's like your kids. You don't tell your kids, hey, hope you get feeling better, hope you get clean. No, you get involved. You make them take a shower. You make them. I'm not talking about you, Catherine. It could be. Well, years ago. But you didn't leave your baby or whatever to leave itself to get cleaned up or anything like that. You got your hands dirty, and they pooped and peed all over you. But you still loved them. Yeah. So, but anyway, the weary and heavy laden, the participle that connects them is a participle in Greek that has the connotation of cause and effect. And the first word weary is obviously the effect. It has the effect on people. It makes you weary. And the other word heavy laden, obviously related to load or loading somebody up is the cause. And if we look at that and take the cause first, heavy laden is portizo, the Greek word portizo. And it's to place a burden upon, or to load is placing a load upon the back of an ox. And eventually it came to mean, oppressed by legal burdens. When you compare or look at Luke 11:46, Jesus said, woe to you lawyers, as you weigh down men with burdens and hard to bear, while you yourselves will not even touch the burdens with one of your fingers. And this is, it's amazing how much is in these just two verses that we're reading. And this is everything that the Jews would have thought of and heard when Jesus is saying this to them. Weary, though, the effect is copio, or whatever, to labor, to toil, expend great effort in hard and disagreeable work, to grow weary, tired, labor to the point of exhaustion. And it is that present continuous tense, meaning basically describing man's fruitless efforts. The more we strive to do it on our own, it's pointless. We're not going to get anywhere. It's just wearing us out. And we just end up in emptiness and frustration. And the second part of it, though, and I will give you rest, is pretty much the pledge, the insurance policy, as you call it. It says I is the first person singular. Obviously, we know that. And it's, obviously a need for Christ, not for ourselves. Rest is anapauo, which means to refresh, rest upon, but also to cease from striving. But how can Christ give you rest? I mean, the solution seems there's no solution at all, because he says, take my yoke. I mean, a yoke's a yoke, isn't it? No? What about the ones with the animals, the oxen? I mean, this is kind of what they referred to. This is kind of where this is coming from. Yeah, I mean, for me, anytime I think of a yoke, I mean, it's, it's laborious. It's a struggle. And Jesus is saying, hey, come to me, I'll give you rest, but hey, take my yoke upon you.
And I always think it's because he goes on, not just say, take my yoke on you, but he says, let's say, take my yoke, and then he adds on to it, my burden is easy, my yoke is light, right? And so, to me, it always makes this image of the two ox, except one is the way outmatched.
Oh, okay, hold on, we'll get to that. You're stealing my lesson, so. But yeah.
I don't know where I was going with that.
No, you'll get it when we get there. What's that? Is it just this physical rest only, or is it, spiritual? Is it mental?
I think it's like any rest from anxiety, like the stress of, I have to do this, right? Like there's a lot of anxiety. If you think you've got to save yourself, that's a lot of anxiety.
Keeping all 615 of those commandments.
Right.
I mean, you're watching where you step, what you say.
There were people who were legitimately trying, because they, out of their love for God, they were legitimately trying to do everything God asked. And I can see somebody really stressing themselves out. And I think that's why you see folks like David, people who get hard after God, at some point, they just accept, God, there has to be grace from you, or I'm dead. Right? They just accept that.
Well, even Paul said, hey, I'm a Pharisee of Pharisees, I've done it all, If you want to look at somebody that's, followed the law, I've strived for that, but, I count that all rubbish. It's pointless. Take your yoke on you. Take my yoke upon you is arrow, and it means to take up, lift up. Here it's used in the sense to take on oneself that has been lifted in order to carry it. Basically, it's a decision. You got to decide in your mind, are you going to do it? It's also used to take up one's cross, and we've read that in Romans and other places. My yoke is, of course, the key phrase. The Lord didn't say, come to me and I'll remove all your yokes, did he? Is he going to remove all our burdens? Did he tell us, hey, after you believe in me, you're golden. There's nothing else you got to worry about.
And apart from the thing with the unequally matched.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Another really great thing with this too is a yoke binds two animals together, so they've got to walk the same path. Now they might have a wrestle with that, but the stronger one is going to make this indecision, right, on where they're going to go. And if we recognize that God is the stronger between us, and we're yoked to Him, if we're going to be yoked to Him, we're going to walk beside Him, right? We can't pick our own direction. He's going to be leading us. When He says, "Take my yoke," it binds us to it in a way that we have to go where He's leading.
And that's a choice. I mean, we can't, you can be yoked to him, but at the same time, He also says He's not going to force you either. If you want to leave, unyoke yourself, then, He's going to let you do it. But, obviously that comes into submission, a desire to submit submit to him. And this is kind of, a lot of this is playing into that.
Yoke goes back to when we use the word force multiplier, right? Right? And so the yoke for man is to force multiply their work. So serving him or serving Christ, allowing the yoke of Christ, is gonna force multiply whatever we do.
It's like, giving to Christ. I mean, it's his money anyway. And so when you give it to him, I mean, it's force multiplier. I mean, he can do things with it that you couldn't even imagine. Right. Yeah. And a lot of them, even though we've kind of set the context and these people would have been thinking these things, and these words, obviously we obviously don't speak Greek, not too many of us here, but, a lot of these thoughts would have been conjured in their mind as they hear these things as Christ is talking to them. But how is this not just, like I said, another yoke and not a contradiction? In other words, yoke. Yoke is a burden. You're, like you said, you're yoking two things together. I mean, it's work. It's laborious. Yeah, and that's what Cody said. Okay. There. Okay, I got worried there. Learn, but take my yoke upon you and learn from me. This is the command part of it. We were in the invitation. And then you had the pledge, the insurance, and then he's commanding. He says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." The verb form, it's manathano, and it's a verb form of which methetes or whatever disciple comes from. So it's to learn by inquiry. It's also built by what we call OJT. It's not just learning knowledge, but it's actually getting your hands dirty, experience. Or practice. You're putting things into practice, and that's what he's wanting us to know. Learn from me, follow me, do what I do. You want experience, you want practice. If you really, like you said, taste and see. The Lord is good. Put into practice what I'm saying. If you don't believe me, the key idea is to acquire or custom a habit through practice. Jesus is talking about more than just simple acquisition of information or knowledge. He has in mind to change a life. A transformed lifestyle through intimate relationship with him. Let's compare. There's a number of passages, and we don't have time to do it. I'm not going to do it tonight, but these are some of the passages that talk about that. Deuteronomy 17:19, Ezra, Psalms, James, Luke, that talk about this concept. These verses, though, talk about having an attitude of, someone learning, seeks to apply that information. Then you get to the incentives. This is where, Jesus kind of sweeten the deal. Take my yoke upon you, learn from me. It says, "For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest, renewal, blessed quietness for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So if you do these things, then this is basically your reward. This is your life. I mean, it's not going to be, like you said, not going to take all yokes away from you. You're still going to have to, you're going to still experience troubles, because Christ said that, but I've overcome the world. So this, as far as I know, the only place where Jesus talks about himself, his own personality, who he is as a person, for I'm gentle and humble. If you read scripture and stuff like that, I mean, I don't know, Cody, I mean, where Jesus talks about himself, I mean, this is where he's describing his personality. If you were to say something about yourself, I'm a meek, a humble, I don't know of any others where Jesus describes himself as, I'm loving, I'm this, or I'm that. I thought it was interesting. He says, I'm humble, I'm gentle. What is his point? Basically he's telling us, don't worry about, don't fear my yoke. Like your previous masters, the Pharisees, and these people that have laid these burdens on you and burden you down with all these regulations, and, you're struggling. He's like, don't fear when I'm telling you to take my yoke. Don't, when you yoke yourself to me. And easy is Christos or Krestos. It is a form of a verb which means useful, manageable, serviceable, which feels indeed is well-fitting. when Christ tells us to take his yoke upon him, you think Christ's yoke is just tailor-made, like a suit? You get a suit made that's tailor-made to you, your body to fit you? Don't you think his yoke is tailor-made for you? You think Christ knows what you're going through? I mean, so it's not like he's going to burden you down like the Pharisees and Sadducees did to the Jews at the time. He's actually designed something to help you. I mean, to like Cody said, you have this huge ox, you have the smaller ox, and I'll say we're the smaller oxes. And Christ is saying, hey, yoke yourself to me. We're going to go this direction, but team up with me. Yeah, follow me. So, and it says light. My burden is light. And that is elafros, light in weight, agile, not burdensome or overbearing. So what does it all mean? I guess that's what you guys are asking. So after we studied all these words, put all the Greek words of the puzzle together. To take Christ's yoke means to submit to his person as the one who is gentle and meek, as one who is gentle and caring. And he's concerned, like Mark pointed out at the very beginning. He loves us. He cares for us. He's not trying to burden us. But, I mean, it does require us to submit to him. And he's the yoke mate, and this is how he can give, rest to our souls. We struggle all the time. I mean, how many people, he called it kicking against the goad. You've heard that expression. It says it's the picture of two oxen, and this is where it was my lesson. You got one very huge one and one small one. And the little ox is being broken into the yoke. Like you said, the yoke is placed around both their necks. But as they walk with the big ox, the ox is, maintaining a course, a direction. He knows where he's going. And the little one might not want to go that way for a little while, but, eventually, as he's being broke in, if you follow Christ, this is the kind of the idea, the mental picture he's painting. He said, take my yoke upon me and learn from me. Eventually, life, that yoke will be, it's not going to be a burden. It's not going to be hard, but we fight it. And that's what the little ox does until he learns, hey, this is not so bad after all, being yoked to this big ox.
And it occurs to me too, I never thought of it before in terms of the big ox is training, because it is true, they'll put the yoke on between both, because this one can pull the whole thing, but the other one teaches the other one that this will be do when we have a yoke on. Okay?
And the little one is not really doing anything. Right. It's not, doesn't have a burden on it.
Except having to follow. But it's interesting, so then I'm reminded of, I think it's called, there's follow me as I follow Christ. And so one of those things that happen is after enough training, then that ox can actually carry weight of his own, and then take somebody else on it then. Right? So it just reminds me of Paul saying, follow me as I follow Christ. But how did Paul follow Christ? Because Paul yoked himself to Christ and was trained how to be Christ.
Yeah, all the disciples were, as they followed Christ. And that's what I say. It's, I haven't really done a study like this and studying the individual words and trying to put them all together, but there's a lot of packed into it. I mean, Christ is painting this picture of all these things, and it's like, we're so quick to read these verses, and it's, oh, okay, yeah, take my yoke, it's easy burden or whatever. But Christ's like, no, there's more to it than, and obviously the first century Christians would have known more of it because they're used to the Pharisees and Sadducees at the time, the religious elite, experiencing what they were doing to them. But in the normal yoking load is equally distributed between the two who are yoked together. But when we are yoked with Jesus Christ, he bears a load. When we are yoked with him, sharing the joy and the accomplishments of labor without the burden. I mean, we're going to struggle, but we'll be able to do it. Lessons, these are the verses again, as you read them. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy burdened. This is, I can't read it. I got to turn around here. And I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and my burden is light. So conclusion, how can we submit to the Savior's yoke, Jesus' yoke? The answer is found in the command to learn from me, isn't it? I mean, when you yoke yourself to Christ, I mean, you're following him, you're submitting to him, you're learning from him. I mean, he's calling us to serve, but we work and serve in the strength which he gives, right? Can you do it on your own? I don't think we get very far. And so the only time the load becomes overbearing is when we try to take over and do the pulling or handling the load ourselves. It's like that little ox. I don't want to be yoked to you, God. I think I know what to do. So we start pulling, and it becomes a struggle. And we're only pretty much burdening ourselves. You know, we're not hurting God. Well, I mean, yeah, it could be your soul, but do you also find peace, though, and rest if you're doing what God wants you to do? Physical rest? I mean, physically? If your life is out of order and chaos, and you come to Christ, I mean, it's not to say that all your burdens, like you said, all the troubles are going to go away, but do you have a peace within your soul? I mean, your body? But if he's calling everybody and those people that don't believe do come to him, I mean, is there not a peace? I mean, a mental peace? Also, many of us call ourselves disciples, but do we have the right, to respond to him as our Savior? We have, we sleep, I mean, I can't even read it, what wrote. But when he seeks to slip the yoke around our necks to join him, we resist, we back off, refuse to truly listen and submit to his word and acknowledge his authority. Like, no, I don't think so. I know better, God. What are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. Do we do that? Do we think we know what's better? I'm not trying to pick on you, Mark. It seems like you're wanting to say something every time I look over there, so I'm just like waiting to see if you're going to say something. Also, we really refuse to trust in his gentleness and goodness, don't we? I mean, we look at that yoke and think, man, it doesn't fit. In reality, though, like I said, it's tailor-made, just like a tailor-made suit. But we don't believe it.
I have discovered that the more that I just do things the way God would have me do them instead of my brilliant way, right? The more I realize his way really is better. Like it is easier. It is, even if it's like there's shortcuts to things. Even if his way appears to be the long cut, that is actually the shortest route to the effective thing, the right way to achieve the goal without all the trouble that comes with the shortcut that goes through the only way to get your outcome.
Amen. I agree. Been there, done that. I mean, how many of us, are older and wisdom and stuff like that, have experienced that? Have you guys learned? I mean, we think, oh, okay, like Cody said, we've got two ways to do it, and we pretty much know the right way to do it. And you're like, nah, well, I'll just do it this way, this quick, this time, or whatever. And we ended up having more problems or issues or whatever if we'd have done it the right way to begin with. So Jesus told us, for my yoke is easy and my load is light. It's tailor-made for each of us, and furthermore, he's always there with us to bear it. That's if we'll let him, if we'll submit to him. And that's all I got. I appreciate you guys listening. I actually finished on time. Did I? Yeah. I finished on time, surprisingly. All right. You guys got any more questions or anything you want to discuss?
Are we going to sing Trust and Obey?
You can. I'm not singing.
That seems like a perfect song for this one.
Yeah, that's fine with me. It's